Look, there is no mass layoff headline this week, no major economic crash, and definitely no blazing crisis alert popping up on your newsfeed. But welcome to The Explainer, because today we're diving straight into something a lot more sneaky. Millions of people are quietly discovering that their paychecks are buying significantly less this year, and nobody's hiring anyone to fix it. We're looking at a silent squeeze right now, and it fits perfectly into a recurring theme we talk about all the time, things that don't look like a crisis but absolutely function like one. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this for a second. Has your paycheck actually kept up with prices? Because if you're feeling this invisible squeeze on your wallet, even though you have a completely stable job, I promise you, you are definitely not alone. It's a super misleading environment out there. So today, I'm going to show you exactly why this is happening and give you 5 concrete steps you can use to protect your income, even if you never see a single headline about it. All right, so right now, the US labor market is stuck in this bizarre pattern that economists call low hire, low fire. And what this actually means in plain English is that companies aren't doing those terrifying mass layoffs, but on the flip side, they've also almost completely stopped hiring. We are literally sitting at hiring rates that are near multi-decade lows. It's essentially the silent version of a downturn. Job postings have been basically flat for 6 months straight. But here is the truly dangerous part, the part you need to pay attention to. Real, inflation-adjusted wage growth has turned negative. This means even people who are keeping their jobs, maybe even getting small raises, are quietly falling behind, just because their paycheck isn't keeping pace with what everyday things cost. And it's the kind of squeeze that is just incredibly easy to miss, mostly because there's no single catastrophic moment that announces it's happening. It's not a crash, it's a slow leak. Actually, I love this analogy because a dramatic crisis, that forces you to make a decision, you have to react. But a slow leak breeds complacency. People just keep going to the same job at the same pay, telling themselves that nothing has really changed while their actual purchasing power is just quietly eroding away month after month. So, what's actually causing this? Let's look at part 1, the hidden drivers of inflation. The problem is, when the job market is frozen like this, you can't just jump ship to a new company for a quick 20% pay bump to outrun your rising costs. And those costs, they are absolutely still rising. Inflation is back in a really uncomfortable way. June's annual CPI hit 3.8%. But what's even more concerning is core inflation. That's the one that strips out the volatile stuff like food and energy, and it's been climbing steadily every single month. Economists are warning us, this isn't just a temporary blip. These costs are deeply embedded in the system now. And here is a massive reason why. 11.7%. That is the new effective tariff rate. Get this, over the past year, it's skyrocketed from just 2.1%. And the research shows that more than half of that incredibly steep cost increase is being passed directly through to you, the consumer, every single time you check out at the store. And to make things even messier for business pricing, there's a temporary 10% blanket tariff that faces a scheduled expiration really soon, on July 24th. But a recent May court ruling actually found that the administration exceeded its authority in imposing it, which means the whole outcome is legally completely up in the air. And if there's one thing businesses absolutely hate, it's uncertainty. So what do? They usually just price that uncertainty right into the goods we buy, just to cover their bases. Okay, and then there's a completely different sector feeding into this problem, and this one blows my mind. Check out this staggering comparison. Tech companies are projected to spend more on AI infrastructure next year than the entire US military budget. Just think about the sheer massive scale of that money moving through the system. This crazy AI spending is an unusual, totally new driver of inflation, and it's quietly pushing up costs across the board. For example, data center electricity prices are up almost 6% over the last year. The costs for memory and storage chips are surging. We're even already seeing Apple raise prices on iPads and Macs because of it. It's a massive infrastructure boom, and we're kind of all funding it through higher prices on everyday tech. So, bringing it back to the data, the crucial point is this: tiny little percentage, 0.1%. Economists estimate that every 10% rise in AI hardware costs adds a hidden 0.1% directly to overall consumer inflation. Now that sounds tiny, right? But when you look at the billions and billions being spent, it compounds into a very real, very heavy drag on your wallet. Which brings us to part 2, the Federal Reserve reality check. When you look at your own household balance sheet against the Federal Reserve's latest data, a pretty harsh reality sets in. Telling yourself nothing has changed is exactly how your financial stability secretly decays. If your net worth isn't actively growing to outpace these silent inflation drivers we just talked about, well, it's shrinking. The people who survive and actually thrive in this exact economy, they aren't waiting for a headline to tell them to panic. They're the ones who look at their personal finances, notice the leak, and act on it before it turns into a massive, unfixable hole in their budget. You got to fix the plumbing before the house floods, right? So how do we do that? Let's get into part 3, 5 steps to protect your income. We are going to walk through this concrete 5-step playbook right now. The whole goal here is to make sure you don't have to sit around relying on some magical external economic shift or wait for a hiring boom that honestly isn't coming anytime soon. Let's break these down one by one. Step 1. You have to calculate your real raise, not your nominal one. Look, if you got a 3% raise this year, but CPI and your personal inflation experience is running at 4 or 5%, you did not get a raise. You took a pay cut. It's that simple. You need to subtract the inflation rate from your nominal raise to see the hard math on whether you actually got ahead or fell behind. You have to know your real numbers. Step 2. Stop waiting for the job market to just hand you something. With hiring sitting at multi-decade lows, just waiting for a better offer to magically fall into your lap on LinkedIn is a completely losing strategy right now. If you want to move roles, you have to expect it to take much longer and require significantly more direct, aggressive outreach on your part than it would in a normal year. Step 3, build skills that are actually in demand, regardless of corporate hiring freezes. Even in a low hire market, companies desperately need specific talents. You have to identify what's actually growing. Right now, like the data showed us earlier, anything adjacent to AI infrastructure, the energy demands for those massive data centers, and the skilled trades required to build them, those are hot. Pivot your generic experience toward these specific growing fields. Step 4, treat your stable job as leverage, not just a cozy comfort blanket. Use the predictability of your 9-to-5 to deliberately and aggressively build savings, knock out high-interest debt, or develop a second income stream. Please don't confuse stable with fine. Use that peace of mind during the day to play offense with your after-hours time. And finally, step 5, shift from an annual budget review to a quarterly one. In a slow-leak economy, prices for things like electricity, groceries, and hardware, they shift way faster than a yearly review is ever going to catch. Sitting down every 3 months catches the erosion of your purchasing power way before it can severely damage your savings rate. Look, nothing about this week's job market is going to make primetime news. And honestly, that's exactly why it's so dangerous. It's a slow leak, not a crash. And slow leaks are the ones most people completely ignore until the damage is already done. You absolutely do not need a crisis to justify taking control of your income right now. Remember, the absence of a crisis headline is not the same thing as the absence of a problem. So I really want to hear from you on this. Has your paycheck actually kept up with prices this year? Or have you started to notice that slow leak we talked about? Drop a comment below with your personal experience in this weird job market. And hey, if this explainer helped you understand the silent squeeze and gave you some tools to fight back, make sure to stay tuned for our next deep dive into the numbers that are quietly shaping your world. Catch you next time.